Crawlers.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, everyone, welcome to an exciting episode of Dungeon Crawlers Radio, where we have doubled the Krebs. That's right. Last week we were only down to one Krebs. This week we've doubled. That means this show is going to be double the excitement and double the fun.
Woohoo!
It's almost like having double mint gum. Yeah.
Almost. This episode not endorsed by Double Mint Gum.
No.
Well, you know
no,
what?
it's not.
You know, it'd be a great way to start the show. I've got some good news to share.
All right.
What
is that?
I got a job offer the other day.
Really?
The only weird thing is that they wanted to pay me in vegetables, but I found the celery was unacceptable.
You know what? I'm gonna admit this. Last episode we didn't have any dad jokes. I was so
They didn't
Ended
quite
the-
fit in.
I know we ended the show and I'm like, there wasn't a single dad joke. That was sad.
Well, I was thinking about some involving airplanes, but I just couldn't get them to land.
Yeah.
I thought you were worried that talking about mythical beasts, all your jokes would be too unicorny.
Oh, I like that one. I like that one.
I can't
Wow.
tell if that's a compliment at this point, but I'll take it.
So, folks, it as you can tell, it's been a while. It's been another week, and this week we want to talk about a show that is probably dear to our hearts, but hopefully it won't be as polarizing as Andor was. We will talk about season 3 of The Mandalorian, which really interesting on the internet, though, has been a little bit polarizing as far as people's opinions. I'm interested to see what your guys' opinion is, and as we talk through this season, which definitely had a different flavor.
It did.
So from the start, there was some really cool tie-ins that they were starting to show to lead up to the Ahsoka series, in my opinion. And there was some very interesting character growth among several of the characters and some very interesting cameos.
So before we go any further, I think it would be responsible of us to simply state the obvious: spoilers, oh my, the spoilers for the rest of this episode. If you have not watched all of Mandalorian Season 3, do not cry when you hear all the wonderful secret tasty goodness things that we throw out during this conversation.
You know, it reminds me of River's song in Doctor Who when she's like, spoilers. Yes, that's right. Anything that is said from this point on is your own fault if you have not watched this series and you want to complain. We'll just make it that simple. All right. So the first episode, we see them flying in the Naboo spacecraft has been modified, and you see the space wells in, as they're traveling through light speed.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely a tie-in to Star Wars Rebels and what happened at the end of Rebels with Ezra and Thrawn, which is really amazing to see that. And then, there are a few other things. We got to see Zeb from Rebels show up in one of the episodes, as well as several different people that were playing other characters that I was very shocked and surprised to see them in the series. One of those, of course, is good old Doc Brown and Jack Black. Lizzo.
Freaking Lizzo.
Do we want to talk about these cameos for a minute?
Yeah, let's jump into those.
Well, my thought on I don't really mind cameos, but
Mhm.
you've got to really be careful not to take the audience out of the story. Remember, all of this depends on suspension of disbelief. So Lizzo and Jack Black, who I usually like in other things, in this one, it definitely came off as something of a stunt, and I thought it was really extraneous to the plot line. I didn't think it was necessary. Compare that to Christopher Lloyd. Christopher Lloyd got into a character. It wasn't Lizzo and Jack Black in a Star Wars costume. Christopher Lloyd was a character.
Yes.
And his cameo did not jar me at all. It fit in, and it was wonderful. It was fantastic. The other two just, as much as I love them normally, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and I didn't think it was necessary to the storyline.
Well, and on top of that, that particular episode is the episode that I like the least in the season. That episode, if you imagine the plot line, the trunk line as a linear story that's being told, you can get very close to the end of the season and then take that linear expression and draw a loop that goes over the top and then comes back where it left off, because the start of that episode and the end of that episode were the parts that actually belong to the main plot. Mm-hmm. The episode itself has no impact on the story going forward. It doesn't even resolve the IG-11 problem. So there was literally, that was a Phantom Menace moment where you could cut the contents of that episode out, with the exception of where it started and where it ended, and you would have a complete story. You could have taken the start of that episode, the start and the end, and you could have plugged it on to the beginning or to the end of another episode, and you would have had the whole story.
It definitely was a filler episode. We've watched many series over the years, and you can tell when there's an episode that it's just in there to fill up a spot, and that's what it really felt like. Definitely. I did really enjoy Christopher Lloyd's character. He very much felt like he was a character in the Star Wars universe, and I will agree that it was just Lizzo and Jack Black playing in the Star Wars universe, and they're just like, here you go, play around. We'll just give it to you. And don't get me wrong, Jack Black has the ability to act. He can.
Oh, he's a great actor. He's a very good actor.
But the frustrating thing is he was just playing Jack Black in Star Wars, and so is Lizzo. So it was really frustrating. And they had a great opportunity to expand on this world that has old Clone War technology robots running around.
Yeah.
Pretty much acting as manservants for everyone around. So there was some good opportunity to play off of that. They did a little bit, but not much. There was a few catchphrases, like when they went into the android, the droid bar, and they're like, we don't serve your kind here. That was kind of a nod back to A New Hope. But really, that was the one and only episode where I just felt like, I wasn't a big fan of that one. And there was nothing to gain.
Yeah, and if I could put a cherry on this one, then we can move on to the next part of this topic. But that episode was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, and after 3 seasons of Mandalorian, I can say definitively and with like patterned consistency, Bryce Dallas Howard's episodes are consistently the weakest episode in each season.
Okay.
Hot take. I want to be clear. I respect Bryce Dallas Howard's talent lineage, as well as her own personal talent as an actress. She's an incredible actress. But my word, what's funny is before the episode ended, I actually thought to myself, I was like, that felt like a Bryce Dallas Howard episode. and then it was all directed by, and I was like, there we go.
What other episodes did she do?
She did the episode in season 1 where Mando fights the ATST for the tribe that can't defend themselves. It's like the Magnificent
Samurai.
One. Yeah, the Seven Samurai, Magnificent Seven.
That one is another one of those that I felt was a filler episode that didn't add anything.
In defense of that episode, because it was season 1, we found out a little bit more about how he, the practice of not taking off your helmet and things like that, and how do you eat, but very, very, very little was gained in terms of the Mandalorian story, and that is consistently her gig. I'm gonna find out what episode she did in season 2 and see.
And this is the thing. So it seems like, in my opinion, she does like a theme. So that was like the Seventh Samurai. This one felt like Babes in Toyland, when they're fighting the Nutcrackers with the droids and that a little bit, and when they're in their glass bubble and no one can touch us.
Okay, she also did direct The Heiress in season 2. This is the episode where Bo-Katan and her team show up. That episode was actually of value.
Okay.
So I have to give it that. But in terms of storytelling, in terms of the drama, the emotion, all of her episodes are weaker than what we see from Dave Filoni or Rachel Morris or Jon Favreau or like any of the directors that are on this journey with us. She's the one who consistently lets me down.
So now let's move on. What were your thoughts on the reveal of the Titan monster in this season? Because last season we got the Krayt Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Now this season we get the Mythosaur,
which, oh my gosh,
for the longest time it's been extinct. We've never known about it, and now we realize there is still one alive that we know of on Mandalore.
That was when Bo-Katan dove into the water to find Din Djarin, and she was pulling him out, and then there's that moment with like the eye and the tusk, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's a Mythosaur, like I was freaking out for a second. But it was so poignant in how it set Bo-Katan sort of unintentionally on her path to redemption within the eyes of the Watch. And then they almost immediately threw that away because she can walk in both worlds, but even so, that was a character redemption moment for Bo-Katan, and you could see the character change. And I loved it.
Yeah. No, I think it was fantastic.
I really liked it too.
And I love how we're getting these mythic beasts back. We had the Krayt Dragon, which definitely came back larger than we thought. It looks like the Mythosaur is probably just as big, if not bigger. So that was fantastic to see. Not only that, I do like how it did set Bo-Katan on a path of redemption, like you said. It was really cool. We also found out how she lost the Darksaber in this season, and why. And it wasn't. It was for a really, in my opinion, really selfless and valid reason. She was trying to save her people, and she was betrayed by Moff Gideon.
Moff Gideon.
He almost looked like a Darth with that horrible helmet.
We'll talk about that in a second.
He was wearing, but yeah, it was really cool to see that. And not only that, it was cool to start seeing the Mandalorian tribes reuniting and going to Mandalore. And Mandalore isn't this wasteland. It actually is livable. And then finding people that were living on it, and they had small little gardens and places that they resided on. It was exciting to see the Mandalorians come. And I'm pretty sure our friends in the Mandalorian mercs were just like, yeah, seeing the Mythosaur, seeing Mandalore, the Mandalorians returning to Mandalore and all that. It was exciting to see that.
The larger story of season 3 was the restoration of the Mandalorians as, I don't want to say a race, but yeah, as a
tribe.
They're a people.
Okay.
Yeah, there are people. I mean, anyone from the planet Mandalore and its surrounding moons are Mandalorian.
Yeah, and foundlings.
Yeah,
foundlings. Yeah,
foundlings. Yes.
So up until this point, I mean, the whole Mandalorian mythos started with Boba Fett.
Yes,
just showed it up in the movies, and he was kind of a lone wolf, and that in the canon movies there wasn't really much of mention of other Mandalorians. We didn't see very many others until Din Djarin, and he behaved primarily like a lone wolf. And but they expanded a little bit on the lore by saying they've got this covert. There's a few other people, but all of them act as lone wolves that have a common code that they follow.
Well, and because at that time, only one was allowed on the surface at a time.
Yeah. So there was a lot of this emphasis on the individual. As the season has gone on, season 2, season 3, the Book of Boba Fett, they have really added more and more Mandalorian-related characters. They have expanded upon the lore. They've explained to the audience the planet, the culture, and they're neither rebel nor empire. They're kind of independent, but they're affected by both.
Yes.
And so I would say that that part of it, it could go bad, but so far I'm really liking this part. They're doing a good job of adding to it and building the world. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. They're building the world and adding to what we started off with. Now they have to be really careful, and the way and moves that Disney has been making recently make me a little bit scared, because you can't, if you're just doing this to milk the cash cow, eventually your fans will turn away. It's got to serve the story. Go back to Lizzo and Jack Black. That didn't serve the story.
Not one bit.
Be careful, Disney, like you listen to our podcast, be careful adding to this that it serves the story, and please have some continuity.
This episode not endorsed by Disney.
The one thing I do like, though, is their world building. They're telling you this information, but in a way that doesn't say, you should go watch Clone Wars to know this. No, we're still giving it to you. And those people that do know Clone Wars, this is making it really exciting for you, because you know what Mandalore was like before. You know who Satine was, Bo-Katan's sister, that Obi-Wan was in love with, that died at the hands of Darth Maul. You know all these things, but it's okay that if you don't know those, because we're going to tell you the things that have happened so that you care about these characters and really want to see them succeed. I mean, when those jet troopers come in, man, I was just like, this is crazy. And then when the heavy gunner, when he locks him behind that door, and you see his gun, he's just blasting his gun so much it's literally melting, was amazing to see.
So, this brings me to sort of like a more generalized question here, but this season, like you were saying earlier, Daniel, it's a bit more polarizing than the previous two seasons. Yeah. The first season, the second season, generally speaking, were positively received and scored very high on an episode per episode basis. But this season is a little bit more of a mixed bag. And I think we could all agree that this season does feel different than the first two. Yes. So my question to both of you, starting with, let's start with Matthew. Let's start with, what do you think this season got wrong? And just so you guys know, I am going to ask what this season got right. So just briefly, what do you think this season got wrong, generally or specifically?
That's a tough one. I wasn't as invested in the storyline of the what's what I'm looking for?
The Doctor?
The Empire people that have been reconditioned, or brought into, they're trying to atone for their past, and you got the double agent in there, of course, that we've seen before. All of that stuff was going on, and I'm like, this doesn't connect with the Mandalorian storyline. There was that one piece where she gets in the way and sabotages an effort, but even that was just a very, very tenuous thread between the Mandalorian story and the Rebel Alliance, what's going on with them. Yeah, the Republic, thank you. The Republic stuff that's going on. And I'm like, why are they sticking this in here? So I think that that's going to resolve into additional stories, perhaps in Ahsoka, perhaps in other series, or future seasons of The Mandalorian. But that felt out of place to me in this. And then there's another thing that kind of stood out to me. The Republic pilot finds the shuttle transporting Moff Gideon, and I'm like, there wasn't anybody who cried foul when this guy didn't show up for trial, and that when he gets there and through tech reasons, he's able to determine that this scrap of metal in the wall was Beskar steel, and he says Mandalorians, and it goes nowhere. I mean, that's an obvious thread that, well, we got to investigate the Mandalorians. Why did they break out Moff Gideon? And then, of course, at the end, we find out that they aren't the only ones that have Beskar steel armor now. But that whole thing, it didn't go anywhere. And when Mandalorian walks in and talks to that pilot face-to-face later, he doesn't even question him. doesn't ask about Moff Gideon, doesn't do anything. So things like that are dropped story threads. I think that's another that's a little mistake they made.
I think you're absolutely right. Daniel, what do you think this season did not get quite right, or did it completely wrong?
Well, first I'm going to agree with Matthew. The side arc definitely did not fit. It's much like season 2 with Mon Mothma. It just didn't fit with the story. And even then, going into season 3, what did anything that Mon Mothma went through in season 2 affected this season? Nothing.
When you say Mon Mothma, isn't that Andor?
Mon Mothma was an Andor.
Was that Andor? Never mind.
That was Andor. I know. Okay. It starts to blur right now because there's a lot of Star Wars universe.
But so well, I'm just proving my own point.
Your point remains. Your point is valid because that was a bit weird.
Stories that don't contribute to the actual story.
Yes.
So will that? I mean, and really, she was working for Gideon. Like, I don't see how this is going to resolve into Ahsoka. Maybe it will. I don't know. But it really felt out of place. The second thing, I do agree. He goes out, he investigates, and like no one worries, or does anything. They kind of hint that, oh yeah, he was killed in a shuttle explosion. Well, why didn't anyone bring the shuttle in to do a CSI sweep? I mean, that seems like a logical thing. Okay, well, why did it explode? Who was it an attack? Was it a malfunction? Like that, at least to me, that seems like that would have been the first thing for a high priority target like this. Was this done intentionally? But it's just floating out there. This Lambda shuttle that he flies up to, and then, he finds the Beskar armor and doesn't question. But he offers a job to him. So those are some things. The other thing I really think why is so polarized is because the previous 2 seasons have been focused solely on Din Djarin. It's been his story. It's been a singular thing where he's going out. We hear the Old West tune every time he shows up, and it's been all about him. This season was more about Bo-Katan. This was more about her journey. Din Djarin was kind of a side character along for the ride, and so was Grogu. I think that's what really separated this for most people.
Yeah,
I think you could also say that that Grogu had some growth, some character growth in this story as well.
I mean, they all did. I even think Din Djarin had some growth. A lot. The Armorer did. Several of the Mandalorians did. But I really feel like this season was not his story. It was Bo-Katan's. And he was just along for the ride. And I think that's what's upset a lot of people, because from the beginning, it's been his story, his arc. And we kind of got sidetracked so that, it's like the Book of Boba. It was Boba Fett's story, and then suddenly Din Djarin shows up, and now it's the Mandalorian now. Or I should say Dances with Tuscans, and then Din Djarin shows up.
But, to that point, though, and I'm a little mixed on this one myself, to be honest, but I think there's always something beautiful in having a like a poly meaning to a statement or a common phrase or the title, just like The Walking Dead as a title for the show. When you realize that title does not refer to the zombies, it refers to the living, then it has such an incredible impact on the meaning. In this case, The Mandalorian refers to Din Djarin for part of the story. But then The Mandalorian refers to Bo-Katan, and The Mandalorian, for at least a portion of it, refers to Grogu.
I mean, honestly, you can even say The Mandalorian is the race, the Mandalorian race.
That's true.
The Mandalorian people. Honestly, I enjoyed this season. I'm not against it, but I can see where people are like, well, this is about this guy. Now you're making it about her. Well,
that's true.
Honestly, as a whole, I think his story led up to these events. We saw the seeds planted last season with Bo-Katan, and and her kind of obsession over the Darksaber. And then he ends up with the Darksaber, and then he struggles with the Darksaber, and then things happen where he gets defeated by that weird cyborgian creature that is reminiscent of General Grievous.
It is reminiscent of Grievous.
She saves him. And I really like how we handled her acquiring the
Yes.
Darksaber in a way that didn't involve the two of them having to fight in single combat to the death.
Yes, I agree with that. I thought that was a piece of genius. That was obviously a story beat that they planned from the
Yeah.
beginning. You know,
And that was fantastic. Now, the biggest heartbreak, and I wish we had Alton on the show for this, is what happens to the Darksaber.
I know, right? There's so much of me that hopes that the armorer can restore that. I also have some thoughts on this one. I think that the reason that this season has leaves a different aftertaste for a lot of people is exactly what you guys have been talking about. If you think back, like focus to the highlights and the major points of season 1.
Mhm.
Just season 1. Season 1 had a rather brutal feel. Think about the very first episode. Din is there. He, approaches the first target that we see him go after. He walks in all ching ching, with his spurs
Yeah.
jangling and his rusty, earthy
That
looking
armor,
Beskar. And then he throws his line, "I can bring you in hot, or I can bring you in cold." And like, and then they touch on that later in the season. They have a good throwback, and then what happens? He gets into a fight. He's quick drawing. He ends up like lassoing a guy, pulling him into the door, and then shooting and closing the door on the guy, cutting him in half. It's a brutal season. And then second season was that, but like on a larger scale, and it still fit. And of course you see Din growing as a character, Grogu's growing as a character. You get to season 3, and for me, the thing that I don't agree with, that I wish they had not done, I understand why I understand how we got here, but I wish they hadn't. This season has this strawberry taffy thread of cuteness sewn throughout. Like the first episode of season 3, there is tons of adorableness between Grogu and the Anzellans, and there's lots of like little cute Grogu moments. You get later in the season, and then even when Grogu is like training, quote unquote, with the foundlings, he's he feels more like a puppet than he's ever felt before. And what's his maneuver? He jumps forward, then he jumps back, and then he just shoots 3 times while this kid is just standing there like an idiot, right? Like, and then he has fun with IG-12. No, yes. And then at there were lots of cutesy bits with Grogu, even in the last episode, which is supposed to be high stakes. In the very, very last episode, when he's like fighting the Praetorians, it honestly, I started losing my suspension of disbelief, because he felt like a kid's puppet running along a rail, jumping unbelievably, even with the use of the Force, just all those things. That cuteness thread, I think, watered down the Mandalorian experience as established the previous 2 seasons. That's what I think is the biggest thing they got wrong.
I think I agree with you on that. It's, we have to move away from the cutesy factor. Because, quite frankly, I think it's worn out. We got it in season 1, we got it in season 2, but now he's with the Mandalorians. The cutesiness has to go away. He can still have silly moments, but when are we going to play that out for the next couple of seasons? Like, we all know what happened with Jar Jar and his nonsensical stuff.
Which they kind of redeemed in this season, right?
We got tired of it. Now, that is another cameo that I want to mention that was amazing. The Jedi that saved Grogu, that is the actor that played Jar Jar Binks in Phantom Menace. And I am so thankful they gave him another chance to play a much better character.
100%, because he has borne the brunt of that role for a long time. Ahmed Best, he is a much better actor than the credit he was given for Jar Jar. And in that vein, if you don't mind me jumping in on this one real quick, let's talk about what the season got right. And Daniel, you're already on this thread, so keep running with it. Let's talk about what the season did right.
I think what they did right was reuniting the Mandalorians. I think that was a very, very important thing, is that they united them as a clan, as a people. And not only that, they put the rightful leader in place, which is Bo-Katan. Because her sister has passed away. According to the royal lineage, she would be next. So I think that was something that they did right, bringing us back to Mandalore. Not only that, the defeat of Moff Gideon and the really cool battle with the TIE Advance going up against the light cruiser and what they did with the light cruiser to take out the base. I think that was fantastic. The interactions that they had, and then ultimately bringing IG-11 back as the sheriff of Navarro, which was pretty cool. And the little things that interwove that's leading us up to Ahsoka, Zeb showing up, hints at Thrawn, and again that conference with Moff Gideon and all the other Moffs, and it's like, when is Thrawn showing up? We keep hearing that he's going to be here, but when is that going to happen? So the heir to the Empire will show up soon. I think those tie-ins were brilliantly done. The bringing back the mythosaur, these are all really good things, and still delivering it in a really good storyline. Now, I do understand that some people aren't a fan of that, but I still think they still delivered a good quality Star Wars series that is enjoyable. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, and I'm going to say this, and it's going to probably bite some teeth, but it's still better than Andor. But Andor is still better than Willow.
I was about to say, like, the whole like better love story than Twilight. Now it's going to be better Disney show than Willow, right?
Yes.
So that's good. Matthew, what did this season get right?
Oh, they continue to have high quality stories. Mm-hmm. And it's really important. I don't think it can be said too often that without good writing, the rest of it doesn't matter.
Yep.
The stories, the way they interwove this stuff, like Daniel was saying, that they've added more information without necessarily exposition. They were definitely doing a lot more showing. And I like that. Now, when they were on the planet and he was with the other Mandalorians and the foundling got kidnapped by that flying creature.
Oh, right?
Yeah. They all took off with their jetpacks. I love that they ran out of fuel.
Yes.
Because that never happens, right? Those are limited. It's a limited resource. You can't just fly forever on this. Now, in the final battle, when they reached escape velocity, they went from the surface to orbit and back again.
That was a little hard to swallow.
Yeah, after just establishing that in previous episodes, you guys are kind of pushing things here a little bit. So but I love that they did that whole thing of Bo-Katan proving herself to them, doing a good deed. Mandalorian making friends with the heavy gunner, saving his son, and everybody. And nobody talks about it. Nobody belabors it. They just look at each other and they say, "This is the way.
This is the way." And
that's it. It's just like, everything is wrapped up in that. I got your back. I would do the same for you. I owe you a favor. You can, whatever it is you want to say, it's just, this is the way. Mm-hmm. And I loved the way that the emotional response that episode got for me. Loved that part. So the writing and things in that I thought were really good. And I think that, and then we've already mentioned all the other stuff, but for me, it'll be the writing.
Nice. So one thing I want to mention, did anyone notice what was up on the big meat or roast turners when everyone came together?
Yes. Like, okay, so I saw that creature and there was that part of me that was like, okay, hang on a second. Is that one of the quote unquote foundling things that they brought back? Or is that one of the creatures that, we saw Din fight in the first season? Mm-hmm. But it definitely had a turducken shape.
Well, so when they come back after saving the boy, they unload those little bird things. The giant meat on the spigot is the same dimension and shape as those little baby birds.
Yeah, I didn't want to believe that was the case, but
yeah, it definitely looks like it. So, that's okay. They can still eat baby bird. It's light and fluffy. So
Well,
So
it just depends on how long you cook it. Let's not dry it out, right?
yeah,
They should have used a pellet smoker, if you ask me.
yeah.
You know what I thought that I thought you guys made great points, excellent points. I agree with you. The thing that I would add on top of this, and this is, I mean, you guys hit the big salient things, right? But one thing that we got out of this season that honestly gave me that childhood joy that I got at certain points in seasons 1 and 2. This season, more than the other 2 seasons combined, has the best dog fights.
Oh yeah.
Like aerial combat,
Yes.
the whole in the canyon dogfight with Bo-Katan and Din Djarin versus the Imperials. Gosh dang, that felt good. That was a ruckus good time. I have the Star Wars Squadrons video game, and I have a flight stick that I use to play that game. And it's not exactly one of my favorite games of all time, but if you're going to play that game, having a flight stick is the only way to play that game. It is so freaking good that way. And I saw that episode, and I haven't played that game in several a month, right? Like many months have I not played that game. I saw that episode, and almost immediately I wanted to don my virtual flight helmet and get back in the cockpit. The dog fights in this season, it wasn't just one, they had a few.
Oh yeah.
The aerial combat in this season was so freaking choice. They almost did that in lieu of like the bounty hunting adventures. If you look at season 1 and 2, they did bounty hunting so extremely well. That's, that was great stuff. Season 3 is zero about bounty hunting.
Yeah.
It is zero about bounty hunting. It's more about the mission to bring together Mandalore. That's the whole thing, right? In fact, I guess you could look at it and say that Din is his own bounty, right? Like his mission at the start is to be redeemed. It's to find the living waters in the mines of Mandalore. And so he is his own bounty.
Yeah.
I guess you could look at it that way. But the dog fights were absolutely phenomenal. That was the thing that stood out to me as like the best addition to the Mandalorian experience in this season.
Yeah, I mean, not even in the movies do you really get to see that, because it's, in the movies it's a scattered mess. But you get to see this almost up close. It looked very reminiscent of like the dogfight style that you saw in
like Maverick or Top
the
Gun.
second Maverick movie, or Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that. They were flying in between each other. I mean, when they took out that cruiser that the pirate had, and the way they were flying was beautiful. But not only that, what I really appreciated was, these ships that I saw in Clone Wars that the Mandalorians flew, but they're also troop carriers. The bottom just opens up and they just drop out and then ignite their jetpacks, which was amazing and fantastic.
Oh, I loved Bo-Katan's fleet.
Yeah. So I am really excited about that. So the only other thing, maybe we could, I don't think the armorer can rebuild the Darksaber. That's definitely a Jedi thing. But Ahsoka is still around. Luke is still around. Maybe that's how it gets repaired. But I don't even know, because it was such a unique blade.
Well, you know what I keep thinking about in terms of Grogu? Grogu is the first Jedi Mandalorian since the first Vishla, right?
That's true.
Or it was, since the creator of the Darksaber. He's the first Jedi Mandalorian, and that gives me incredible hope for where they're going to take this story.
Yeah, and maybe he's the one that ultimately restores it. I don't know, but that was so sad to see that go and get crushed.
Yeah, that was a piece of Star Wars history just destroyed in a moment.
Yeah, but we'll have to see. My opinion, I don't think it gets an A+ this season.
Yeah, how would you grade this one?
I would give it an A-. It's not quite as strong as the other seasons, but it's still good enough to be a good part of the Mandalorian mythos. And I really wish Disney would start putting them out on Blu-ray and DVD to buy. I hate how they're keeping a hold of it so you can keep your Disney Plus subscription. I want a copy of these so that I can take it on a road trip where I don't have internet and still watch, because they're that good to watch. But it definitely delivers. It's a great story, with the exception of that little bubble that we've already talked about. But but yeah, it's I loved it from beginning to end. We had our final full story arc with Moff Gideon. We have tendrils leading out to the next season, ends into Ahsoka, and we're seeing the Mandalorian people come together.
Yes.
So I enjoyed it.
Matthew, how would you letter grade this one?
I would give it a B plus. The other seasons I think were better. This one wasn't focused on the Mandalorians so much. There was some good moments in it. There were some bad moments. B is not a bad grade.
No.
So I would say B plus.
And a B plus is pretty close to an A minus. It's just short a few points.
And you know, that's where I am too. Season 2 is my A plus. Season 1 is my A. And I'm trying to decide if this is a B plus or an A minus. It really did what it brought to like the future and the story hooks that it presented. I want to give it an A minus, but I want to drop it to a B plus for spending way too much time on the convert episode, and especially the completely useless Lizzo Jack Black episode.
Yeah.
Those 2 episodes out of 8. Is that right? 2 episodes out of 8?
Yeah.
That's
almost a fourth.
Yeah, that's 25% of the show was something you could actually discard.
Yeah.
So, but instead of giving them a C at a 75, right, I'm going to give them a B plus, all things considered.
That's fair. And I mean, the real reason for my A minus is because I watched the Clone Wars, I watched Rebels, and I got those fun tie-ins that I enjoyed.
Yes.
From those, which gave me that extra bump. So, but still, a B plus is still not a bad grade.
I agree. It is a good show. It is a great show. I love this show.
Okay, folks. So this is our review of season 3 of Mandalorian season 3. We would love to know your thoughts. We'd love to know your opinions. Please let us know. Email us at info@dungeoncrawlersradio.com. And if you see us out and about, come say hi. We love that. We had people at FanX do that. We're going to start doing some live. We even did live event recently for the Dungeons and Dragons movie. We're going to be doing some live recordings at some game stores nearby. So we'll be letting you know when those are happening. Definitely come by and say hi. But we're going to continue to give you great shows. We're going to have some great author interviews coming your way. We're going to have a lot of fun stuff. There's some great movies coming out. There's The Flash. We get to see Michael Keaton suiting back up as Batman. We're gonna not only that, there is what other superhero movies? Aquaman 2 is maybe coming out.
Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Guardians of the Galaxy. That's the one I was thinking of. Oh my gosh, that will be coming out. We've got some good movies coming our way that we'll definitely be seeing. We'll definitely be giving those reviews. There's more series coming out like Ahsoka that we can talk about. There's going to be more Star Wars content, obviously, but not only that, we're going to be focusing on talking about other things like Star Trek Discovery. Got to talk about that. And yes, I have watched a Star Trek series, and I binged watched it because I enjoyed it that much.
I am so freaking proud of you, Daniel.
Wow,
this is really weird, but I'm admitting it now. I like the Star Trek series.
I'm looking forward to that episode,
and I will admit it's probably because I have an Anson Mount crush.
Anson Mount is worthy of a man crush.
Oh my gosh. End. After watching Hell on Wheels, man,
he's our guy.
And him playing a Starfleet captain, it works for me. Especially first episode when he's on a horse, it was like such a callback, and he had the beard. So yes.
Look at your captain now. Look at me now. Back to your captain now. Back to me.
yes. So we'll talk about that. The 60th anniversary of Doctor Who is coming up this year. We'll have to talk about. There's a lot of going.
This is a huge year.
Yeah,
and the 40th anniversary of
Kroll, the Jedi. Actually, when this episode launches,
there will be an
in-theater event. Will be in theaters for a week to go see, and that is a must go see.
Return of the Jedi is all right, but I was referring to Kroll.
Yeah, I know you were.
I know. In the immortal words of Han Solo, I know.
Yeah, well, we all know where I stand. I love the movie, but If it were between,
There's no buts. There's no
if
buts.
I had to choose between Kroll and Return of the Jedi, you know which one I'm going to, and it's
Yeah, the answer
The
is
glaive.
the answer
It
is
is-
a double feature.
Okay. I can only pick one. There can only be one.
There can only be one. This is the way.
Wrong franchise.
But hey, I am a McLeod, so I can say it. Anyways, all right, folks. With that said, we'll catch you next time.
And my little nerdlings, remember to always let your geek flag fly, for this is the way.
And whether you are a foundling or you are a dyed in the Beskar Mandalorian, always remember to be epic and don't suck.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find us.